Well, there are 10,500 doctors in training in London. And the GMC is pretty clear about this. It says, duties of a doctor: number one, make the care of your patient your first concern. Number two, protect and promote the health of patients and the public. So our regulator is pretty clear on whether every doctor has this responsibility. Of course, there's sometimes a conflict between those two. Time, resources. It's popular and probably true to say that right first time is cheaper, quality is less expensive than making mistakes. But the next stage review, which put quality at the heart of everything we do, said leadership was something that we had just not yet cracked, and that had to change. And it's for this reason that people say we need to change the culture of the NHS. But the NHS isn't broken. As we saw earlier on a 7-nation comparison, it came out top in a number of fields, not in patient experience, not in some aspects of access, not in some cancer and heart disease outcomes, but it doesn't do badly. In fact, in an 11-nation comparison carried out again by the Commonwealth Fund, wonderfully, the patients in the UK were the best on confidence that were they seriously ill, they would get most effective treatment. That's over 90% of the people surveyed gave that the answer that they were very confident, whether they had an above average income or not, and that was not true of the other 10 countries. So we have something pretty good here in the NHS, but we need to do better. How do we do better? And I think that the speaker who said earlier that patients were the last untapped resource in the health service had it wrong. The last untapped resource in the health service is our population of young people, of trainees, not only in medicine, though that's the topic of today, but that Generation Y. It's got so much to offer. It's techno-savvy, it's used to networking, it's got a much, much better habit of communicating and keeping big networks of friends and colleagues, sometimes internationally, alive. They're collaborative, they're passionate about social responsibility, they're innovative, they're challenging. One interpretation of some of the results that came out of the Collins report, which was very negative about what the foundation doctors said about their experience, may well be because their expectations are set high. An example of that is in that recent GMC trainee survey, foundation doctors were much less likely to say they would recommend the department in which they were currently working to a friend or relative who needed that kind of service than were the more senior trainees. I.e., they're critical. They expect clear direction. They expect instant feedback on how they're doing. They expect a challenging job. They expect to be learning while they're working. They have high expectations, but they are a generation that is very innovative. They're also a generation that puts work-life balance, friends and families high. Now, one of the things that's happened about medical education, there was a fascinating book written about making a doctor by Simon Sinclair, and he trailed around after a bunch of medical students, rather like, observing gorillas in the wild. And he came up with some very interesting observations. One was that these students came into medicine, into medical school, with a set of very strong personal values, and he could watch them over the course of that first year lose those and replace them with professional values, which are not perhaps the professional values that we write out in tomorrow's doctors, but they were the professional values that the hidden curriculum exposed to them, i.e. the importance of power, autonomy, status, and the way in which sharing responsibility, sharing power, actually eroded that. And they learned to take a negative view of doctors who distributed their authority.
they lost their contact with the outside world and its values because of the way in which the long hours culture and the whole way in which medical schools set up prevented them from maintaining their friendships. Now, the consequence of that, I think, is playing out. And I think a generation of young doctors who now have a much better work-life balance, who are not chronically sleep-deprived, who do have time for their friends and family, will stay much more in touch with the values of patients and the public. I think it's very interesting to look at an exercise which was done in London. I think similar things are done around the country about the London Darcy Fellowships, where trainees were taken out of training for a year to work on a quality improvement project that had to be across organizational boundaries and across specialty boundaries. And the evaluation of that was absolutely stunning. And one of the things that came out of it, apart from how they learned and grew, was how the trusts, the medical directors of the trust, learned to believe in the capacity of these young people to make real change happen, to engage with stakeholders in a way that they did not believe would be possible, to network and to move away from the hierarchical limits and constraints that people are used to. So in summary, I would say it is the duty of a doctor to take account of the population as a whole. It is important to retain that depth of field. I think it is necessary to keep the population and the person in the mind at the same time, and that depth of focus is possible. Education is all about keeping that depth of field. And I believe that we should, to quote this common saying, engage a teenager while they still know everything, I would say engage a generation while they still believe in better, because they do.